Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. You know you like my dance moves, homie. Can't compete. Anyways, man, as you guys know, we do have the Superbet Poland Rapid and Blitz coming to a close. So I did grab one of the games between Wesley and Anish Giri. And this is round number 22, and this is a Blitz section. It's a pretty nice, exciting game. But yes, for all my people that are coming from the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking magkaibigan. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking video, aking magkaibigan. I appreciate you guys very much. Anybody who is coming from the Netherlands, I will say hello and thank you for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. I appreciate it very much. But if you guys are ready to go, son, let's take a look and see what we got for this game. So we got the move E4, best by test. We got E5 and knight to F3. We got knight to C6, bishop C4. Knight comes to F6. We got H3, D3, and then we have H6. And for a lot of you guys, this probably will look pretty familiar to you. It is actually the Giuoco Pianissimo as part of the Italian game. As the move order stands right now, it's just the Italian game, 2 knights. But if we go in another order, after we see bishop to C4 and a knight comes to F6, we got D3. If we go bishop C5 and then C3, D6, castles, and then H6, we would be in, of course, there's like an extra move here, but you guys can see the exact identicalness of the situation after we see this right here. Coming up, and then we have this right here. So this is the transposition, and so if you go the other move order, it's all going to be the same thing if you're familiar with the transposition, but that's, you know, just kind of explaining that a little bit. But like I said, we did see this position here, and this is how we got to this particular position on the board. We got rook to E1, we got castles, and last game I mentioned to you guys like the different maneuvering from the knight, but it didn't quite happen in that game, so it does happen here. We see knight B to D2, we got A6, we got knight down to F1, bishop to A7, and knight to G3. So you guys can see like all the little, you know, maneuvering of the knight in this particular one. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it went to C4 before the other game. I'm spacing. But we do see knight to A5. We got bishop back to B3. Allowing the queen to capture on B3 if you want. Knight does take B3, but in the game we actually see pawn takes B3, which was, I mean, it's pretty competitive between the two. You know, I'm one of those players that likes to preserve my structure quite a bit. So I personally would have went queen takes B3. And it was definitely possible to do that. Like I said, they were pretty interchangeable. But we did see pawn taking B3 in the game. We got rook to E8, we got H3, we got D5, pawn takes D5, pawn takes D5, and then we do see the novelty of the game, which is bishop to E3, which is shocking to me. Simply because bishop to E3 is like such a known move, especially if you have the knight coming down here, like we did see earlier. You know, a lot of the times you'll play bishop E3 to contest that bishop on A6 because this diagonal is actually very strong for that bishop. It's kind of like, you know, having a bishop on this diagonal for white. But bishop E3, we got bishop to D7. We see the move B4, and then we have bishop to C6. Checkmate! You know, Black is like, bro, you know what? Fall asleep, you know, do this and go, wee! And then checkmate. But Anish Giri says, bro, like, what do you think I am, bro? Like, I mean, who do you think you're playing, son? So we got bishop takes A7, rook takes A7. We got rook up to E3. So white is going to start to kind of do a very similar thing to the Aliekin's gun. If you're not familiar with, you know, what that is exactly, you know, I will try to show you coming up pretty soon. So we do see rook A to A8. We got queen up to E2. Rook goes to E6, and then we have rook to E1. And for those of you that are familiar with Aliekin's gun, the way Aliekin's gun works is you'll have 2 rooks right here, and you'll have the queen backing them up. And that is what's considered Aliekin's gun. So you can see this is very similar to that. You really, whenever you're lining pieces up, especially the heavy pieces, you really don't want to lead with your queen. You want your queen to be as far back as possible so that there aren't any tactics involved. We do see rook A to E8. We got C4. Queen goes up to D6. We really kind of had to knock the queen out of the way of delivering checkmate on G2. And then so we can take this pawn now. But black does have the ability to take back this pawn over here on B4. We got knight up to F5. And we have actually reached a point in the game that Wesley So finds a really, really interesting, cute move in this position. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think anybody's gonna find, like, if you've seen the game, like, don't cheat, bro. But if you haven't seen the game, I really don't think this is a move that really comes on anybody's radar. I know for sure I wouldn't have thought of the move unless I just knew theory to this point. But if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess and see what move Wesley So plays here, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So, like I said, it really, really looks like a non-move. I think if you came up with this, you know, I don't know, man. You're just crazy to me, bro. Like, because the move is bishop to e4. Now, you know, if you're very familiar with tactics and like kind of how games go, you know, certain like ways to kind of go about, you know, doing your pieces, you would understand that bishop to e4, you know, besides the fact that it just throws the bishop away, it is working to disconnect these heavy pieces with the knight that's placed on e5. So as you can see right now, bishop going into e5 blocks, you know, basically makes the knight undefended. And so there really isn't like a great way to kind of get out of it. So you really need to take here on e4, and then the rook takes on d5. And you see the problem. It's not really a problem. You can get out of it very easily. But you see what I was meaning with like leading with all of your other pieces and putting the queen in the back. You have a situation right now where, you know, if you start, you know, black starts capturing pieces and you start capturing pieces, you're going to have to give your queen up as a result of all that, as opposed to the queen being like a back here, you know. So we do have to sidestep out of that. So that is why you see Anish Giri go queen to f3. And for all intents and purposes, everything is super dead even right here. We got the king sliding over to h7. We got b3. We got a5. Queen goes to f4. We see queen back to b6. You know, queen to b6 doesn't really seem like it's doing a lot, but it is greatly discouraging this move f3 because now you're going to be pinned on the diagonal here. The a7 to g1 diagonal, and that is not really what you want. So the king does sidestep over to h1. We see knight back to g8. We see queen over to g4. Why not threaten mate? So white is threatening their own checkmate, son. Queen goes to g6. We see queen down to e2. I mean, it was okay to, you know, trade queens here. It wasn't like it was bad. But I mean, you know, Giri is trying to keep some options on the board. And so we do see knight back to f6. We got knight to h4. Queen goes to h5. And then something kind of has to give here. So queen takes h5. Rook takes h5. We get knight back down to f3. And we are going to start to be able to push this pawn up here. So we do see rook to c5. We got e5. Knight goes back to d7. And then we do have the move e6. Pawn takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes. And then we actually have a really, really nice move. It is the top move in the position. There's like two top moves in the position, but this is one of them. But it kind of goes along with what I was saying yesterday as far as like, you know, if you're going to be giving up a pawn, you want to try to give it up where you can cause at least your opponent some damage. That's not what happens in this particular case, but you are trying to, you know, weaken white structure some. So we do see the move a4. Pawn takes a4, rook takes c4, and you see that you're going to be getting that pawn back at some point coming up. So, you know, it's not a big deal. We do see the move a5. You know, this pawn is kind of a sitting duck. You know, if you could try to get the rook down, you might have a little, you know, chance of holding it. But we do see the move knight to c5. Rook goes up to e7, trying to attack some pawns. Put the pig on the 7th. So the knight comes down to d3. We see rook down to e2. A rook goes over to a4. We got rook to d2, counterattacking this knight. The knight goes up to c5. We got the move g4. And then now, you know, black has managed to grab the pawn. And I mean, you know, black really kind of just has a pawn. I mean, you know, white doesn't really have any compensation for the piece. You know, black isn't really in any danger. And white doesn't have any threats of recovering that pawn. So, you know, you have some really nice, completely passed pawns over here on the queen side. So that is really where you want to be. So the king goes to g2. We see the move b5. Passed pawns must be pushed. Like, you have to start working these pawns down the board, and they're going to get pretty scary for white. We got rook up to d5, but we have b4. You know, just making sure we protect this knight over here. The knight goes down to d2. Knight goes down to b3. And this is a cute little move here because, I mean, you are thinking, you know, oh, man, I can win this piece right here or whatever. But it's going to be trading everything down. So you do take on a5 with the rook. Knight takes a5. And then we do see king to f3. And you have a problem in the situation. One of the things that's probably sometimes not really paid attention to is the fact that whenever you are getting to end games where most of the pieces have gotten traded down, you know, you see that you only have like some pieces in a knight. So things seems like, okay, everything's kind of even, right? Well, the major advantage that black has in the situation is that they have pawns on both sides of the board. And this makes it really, really hard for a king to try to beat on both sides of the board at the same time. So even just by that alone, you do have a lot more strength in the position if you are black compared to if you are white. Because this black king only really needs to kind of hang out right here on these 3 files. And that's it. So we do see the move c5. We got king over to e3. We got c4. And I mean, you know, this actually looks kind of ugly for white, man. It's like, I mean, you know, what are you going to do to stop these pawns from going down the board, man? Like, you don't really have a whole lot of options, homie. So the knight does go to e4. We got the move g5. King goes to d4. We got c3. King goes down to d3. We got king down to g6, starting to kind of get the king into the action. And then we actually see the move knight to g3. Just trying to like stop what black is trying to do. It's actually interesting in this position because the computer actually wants you to sacrifice the knight to get these pawns off the board. That's how strong the computer is deeming these pawns are on this side of the board. And if you're, you know, a person that's, you know, aware of these types of endgames, you do see that it's very, very strong to have these passed pawns over here. So this is what the computer really, really wants. And I mean, you're still completely lost, but I mean, it's something you can do, I guess. You know, you get in situations where there really isn't like, you know, you don't really have a whole lot of options on what you do. Like it's all going to kind of be losing. So the knight comes back to c6. We see knight to f5. Knight goes to e5 with check. The king goes to c2. We see the move h5 trying to break up the support of this knight. Knight goes to e7 with check. King goes to f7. Knight goes down to d5. And then we do have the really, really nice knight takes g4. And it might look kind of strange, but after the pawn takes back, you really don't have any good ways of getting over here and preventing this pawn from advancing down the board. And it really kind of sucks because you're going to have to put your knight in an insanely passive position just to make sure that this pawn doesn't go where it needs to go. So we see the move h4, knight goes down to e3, pawn goes to h3, and then knight goes down to f1. And this is absolutely not where you want your knight because all your knight is doing in the world is literally just making sure this pawn doesn't go any further. But that is not what you want, like I said. And the problem is, like I said, you have connected passed pawns over here. So what I'll do up here is, I mean, I made a video a long time ago about like beginner, like chess as far as like pawns are concerned and stuff like that. And so I did do a video on connected passed pawns, how they protect themselves and, you know, how they can take on different pieces and things like that. So like I said, I'll put that up here as a card. So if you want to refer to that video, you can. But these pawns basically just hold themselves and the king only has the ability to go back and forth between these squares. It can never go up and advance and attack this pawn because this pawn is going to be rolling down the board. And because this knight is literally stuck to this side of the board protecting this square, it can't really help. And so that's the problem that white has. So their pieces are pretty useless. The king goes to e6. We see king to d3. We see king down to e5. A knight goes to h2. We see king to f4. We see king down to c2. King to e4. So you can see that black is just continuing to make further progress into white's position. We got king to d3. We got f4. c2. King is forced down to b2. We see king to d2. We see knight down to f1 with check. And this is absolutely a spite check. It really doesn't have any other purpose. The king goes down to d1. We see knight to e3 with check. But like I said, this knight is moving further away from this pawn and those squares over there on the h file. King goes to e2. Pawn takes g5, h2. Knight to f5, and then king goes to d2, and it is in this position that Anish Giri resigns the game. And the problem is you can't stop either one of these pawns, and that is just game over. And so that is that. So, you know, Malaka C. Wesley. So in this one, I appreciate you guys very much for coming by. Better means salamat, and thank you, and I'll see you guys next time.